Today we are going to be talking about Vanessa from the show 1000 Pound Best Friends. So a little bit of a recap for those of you that have not been following every video that I've made about this series. So first off, Vanessa is on the show 1000 Pound Best Friends. The show started with her and her friend, and they both wanted to lose weight. Now, her friend actually ended up really being into getting a weight loss surgery because her friend was she was on oxygen. She was in a really bad place. So at the beginning of the show, of the first season, her friend really wanted to get this surgery, but Vanessa was more so against it. She was kind of talking about how she doesn't really need the surgery. She feels like she's doing fine. Like her weight isn't really causing her as many problems as her friend, so she just feels like she can do it on her own. Now, fast forward a little bit, she actually ends up deciding that she does want to get the surgery, and she gets the surgery. Now, the surgery was successful, and she has been very successful in losing weight. Now, fast forward a little bit, Vanessa and her sister have some drama on the show. Now, the drama is basically around the fact that Vanessa feels like her sister enables her a little bit too much, and she was bringing around food, and she just felt like she had to get away from her sister. So at the time, Vanessa and her two sons were living with her sister, right? And she felt like she had to get away from her sister to continue this weight loss and just kind of start with her own life. And so again, fast forward a little bit, Vanessa is living with her two sons, and they are on their own. They don't live with their sister anymore. Now, this most recent season, they've kind of been focusing a little bit on Vanessa's oldest son, Jacob. Now, Jacob is 19 at the time of recording, and he is basically 500 pounds. And there has been a lot of drama basically circling that whole relationship, and the fact that it's clear that Vanessa really wants Jacob and really wants Jacob to lose the weight, and she really loves him and she really cares for him, and Jacob is really struggling with that. This is a very interesting dynamic because I really relate to it, and so that's what we're going to be talking about.
I was already pre-diabetic, so this is more than a wake-up call, honey. This is a shotgun to the head. I need you to start eating better so that you don't have to have surgery.
I'm going to do my best to show what I can from the show, but TLC is pretty strict with what I'm allowed to share without me getting copyright strike. So there's not going to be that much footage. So hopefully you just take my word for it. The dynamic between Jacob and Vanessa is really interesting to me because it reminds me a lot of my relationship with my mother when I was overweight. Because my mom, she always kind of tried to lose weight as well. She struggled with her weight a little bit, nowhere near as much as I did, but she was always trying to encourage me to lose weight as well when I was around Jacob's age, especially once I got up to 18, 19, that was when I was pretty much at my largest. And my mom, she herself, she said this many times to me, she felt really guilty. She felt like it was her fault that I was the size that I was. And I can understand where she's coming from, and a little bit more about me, just kind of sharing about my journey and where I've been. So growing up, we were really poor. And so actually I was taken away from my mom when I was really young, me and my brothers and sisters, because my mom was a drug addict. And so we were taken away from her, but luckily we were actually put back with her after a year. Now, when we were put back with her, again, we didn't have much money. We were very poor, living on government housing, stuff like that, right? And so my mom always had a lot of guilt about that. And we've talked about this, and she's told me, which totally makes sense, is that because we didn't have much money and she couldn't give me much, whatever she could give me, she would. And what that ended up being was food, right? So she could get soda, and I liked soda. So then she never wanted to say no. And obviously me, I always wanted more. I always wanted more. And there was a lot of stuff that I couldn't have, right? New clothes, new gaming systems, anything that's, fancy, right? Like it just didn't happen for us. But food was something that, food that isn't the healthiest is usually pretty cheap. And so we would have a lot of very cheap food at the house, and I was able to just kind of grab whatever I wanted. And I did that. And that was one of the things that led me to being the size that I was. And it was really hard for my mom to say no to me because she's told me that she felt like she had to say no to me about pretty much everything else because we just didn't have money for anything really, right? And so if she could say yes, she was going to say yes. And that was one of the biggest struggles that I think we really had when I was younger and growing up. Now, if we fast forward a little bit, obviously that came to a head when I was in high school and I was, getting up to being my largest size, and it was clear that it bothered me and I really struggled with it. But again, I wasn't ready to lose weight. I had tried to lose weight a ton of times growing up. I had tried so many times. You guys know what it's like, right? And I was just never able to succeed. And it wasn't until I was ready that I was able to actually lose the weight. And I feel like that's really the crux of a lot of this stuff that's going on between Vanessa and Jacob. It's clear that she loves him, right? It's clear that she wants to see him succeed. And it's clear that she is scared that he is going to turn into where she was, right? Because she was basically bedridden. Like it was really bad for her, right? And she sees him being larger than she was at that age, right? He's 19, and she talks about the fact that, he is quite a bit heavier than she was, and that scares her.
I want you to see, with me losing the weight, baby, my life has changed dramatically. I'm actually able to do things, get out, walk. There's gonna be a time when this weight is gonna overdraw you. You're young right now.
Now, Jacob is very clearly kind of annoyed by this. You can tell he's a nice kid, and he doesn't try and argue or fight back. Again, who knows how real all of this stuff is because it's filmed, right? But you can tell that he listens to his mom, and he lets her say what she's going to say. He doesn't really argue with her too much. But it's clear that he just isn't there yet, right? Like she keeps telling him how like scared she is for him and all this stuff, and he's just like, dude, I just want to play video games. Like I'm sorry, I don't want to eat the cauliflower. I don't want to eat the vegetables. I just want to play video games. I want to hang out with my friends. And you might say that that's lazy, but again, at the end of the day, if he's not ready to do it, it doesn't matter how much information people try and share with him, how much people say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this. Until he is ready to do it, it's just never going to happen. One of the biggest things that they kind of talk about in these episodes are getting Jacob to the doctor. So they end up bringing him to the doctor. Now, before they go there, Vanessa kind of talks about how when he was, I think it was 13, he was actually diagnosed as being pre-diabetic, right? And that was really interesting to me because when I was in high school, I was in 10th grade, I think, I went to the doctors, and first off, it was a horrible experience. Like it was seriously like horrible. It was like as bad of an experience as you can have as an overweight person at the doctor's. That's what I had, right? Like I remember they weighed me, and the doctor was just like making this noise like, oh. He did that, and I was just like, oh my God, here we go. And like then they tried to like do my blood pressure, and then the blood pressure cuff wouldn't work because my arm was too big, and he was like, oh, we're gonna have to use the one for the leg on your arm, and just like being very judgmental. So I was like over it, right? And then but during that conversation, during that visit, the doctor ended up telling me I was basically pre-diabetic. So it was like very close to being considered diabetic. And I remember I thought to myself, oh, well, we're good. I'm not even pre-diabetic, because at the time I was like, I'm probably diabetic. Like I had just kind of been like, it's probably what it is. But again, even hearing that, I didn't change anything. Nothing happened, right? I was like, oh yeah, whatever. I remember I went because I had taken time off of school, but then later in the day I had to go back and I didn't get to take the whole day off. And because I came back in the middle of PE class, right? And I talked to the coach, and he was like, oh, how did it go? And I was like, yeah, they told me I was like almost pre-diabetic. And I remember he was like, what? Like, are you? And I was just like laughed it off. Right? I was like, oh yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm not even there yet, so I have a few years. And he was like, I could tell he was like concerned. And again, I was just not ready to lose weight. And so nothing changed for a multitude of years, even after that whole situation.
486 pounds.
So they end up going to the doctors. They do a bunch of tests. They had done a bunch of tests earlier, so they're getting the results. And basically, it's found out that Jacob is diabetic, right? And so obviously, Vanessa is very distraught about this, this information. And it's found out that he weighs like 490 pounds, basically, right?
Finding out Jacob has diabetes is like a gut-wrenching punch. When it's your kid that the doctor's talking to, it's different than when it's yourself.
And so he's almost 500 pounds. Again, he's 19. And Vanessa has this, you can tell that she, again, really, really cares for him. And for him, it's just, it's clear that like he sees the information, he sees what's going on, but they do like interviews with him after. And he said he says something along the lines of like, yeah, you know, hearing that was kind of, you know, maybe makes me want to change, but it's clear like he's not there yet.
It's a wake-up call, kind of, and hearing this is kind of, you know, stressful because she's telling me all these things that, you know, I'll have to change, and I wish I could just focus on myself and do what I want to do. I just want to do it on my own whenever I want to do it, whenever I'm ready.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I know people might disagree with me here, but at the end of the day, I think if you really want to help someone, and this is like information for someone that might have a family member or, you know, a loved one that is struggling with their weight and they just want to help. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you love the person and how much you want to help the person, how much you want to, like, you tell them, oh, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Until the person is ready to change, like nothing that you do, no matter how much you try and hide the food from them, no matter how much you try and scare them into being like, you need to lose the weight, or this is going to happen, or that is going to happen, until the person is ready that has to lose the weight, all of this stuff, all of these things that are going on is a waste of time. You might hear that and think that's not true. Trust me. Because losing weight is such a personal thing and it takes making decisions that you probably don't want to make, right? You have to eat this instead of that. You have to do this instead of that you probably don't want to do in the moment. It takes doing that constantly throughout the day. So if you're not going to do it for yourself and you're just doing it to try and appease someone else, it just isn't going to happen, right? And so especially when we're talking about a kid that's 19 years old that hasn't seen any real issues yet, right, from their weight. They're not seeing any, like, they're not having any serious pain. They're not really limited in their mobility. They haven't had those serious issues. Until stuff like that happens, that's when the stuff changes. You might think to yourself, oh, well, he found out he's diabetic. I'm telling you, when you're 19, right, when you're in high school or just out of high school, when you're young like that, the thought of that, it just doesn't hit the way that you think it would. So the reason that I wanted to talk about this episode and what's kind of going on here is, again, it just reminds me a lot of myself. And so I hope that, say, like, if Vanessa watches this, I was Jacob, okay? Like, I want to make it clear. I was that. That was me. I had zero intention of losing weight. I didn't think it was possible. I just didn't care, right? And that's where it seems like he's at. But he can still change. There is hope. But trying to push it on someone and force it almost never works. But I just felt like this was such an interesting episode, and seeing this all play out, it literally like felt like I was living through something again, you know? And so I just wanted to share this with you guys because, again, I thought it was really interesting, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have had similar situations, whether you were Jacob or you were Vanessa or you were someone else trying to help the Jacob, right? Like, these things are universal, and like these feelings that we have and these things that we go through, it's not just you, right? And I always really like seeing that kind of stuff. Like, obviously it sucks for Jacob right now, but for me, it was interesting to see that there are people that are going through literally what I went through 10, 12, 15 years ago currently, right? And hopefully if Jacob sees this, right, like, you can change, and like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It just might take some work, but like you're not a lost cause, you know? And anyone watching this, right, you're not a lost cause, no matter how lost you might feel or how, you know, down the rabbit hole you feel like you are and there's no way to climb yourself out. I always believe that there's hope. I always believe that there's a way out until that last breath that you take. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share this video with you guys, share my thoughts. I would love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you next time. Peace.